Let's kick things off with a highly relatable and honestly kind of painful question. How many versions of your final document actually exist right now? I mean, we've all been there, right? You're hunting through endless static files and folders, just desperately trying to decipher if, project underscore manual underscore final underscore v3 underscore reviewed underscore actual final is in fact the true final version. It's a massive headache, it totally wastes your time, and man, does it introduce a ton of risk.
So, welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving into a massive paradigm shift in how we actually develop and manage technical information, and we're pulling this directly from the ISO 26531 standard. Our main goal here is to talk about replacing those archaic, file-based documentation practices with modern automated systems. We're going to see exactly why you need to stop managing your documentation like static files and start treating your content as actual code.
Here is our roadmap for the Explainer. First, why we have to stop using static files. Second, the ISO 26531 standard. Third, treating content as code. Fourth, how to branch, merge, and control. And finally, automating quality and validation.
All right, diving right into Section 1, stop using static files and the hidden costs of unstructured documents.
Think about the hidden nightmare of traditional desktop publishing for a second. When you're managing documentation as standalone, unstructured, static files, you're basically creating a systemic failure loop. Let's say you have a single safety hazard statement. Well, in a static file system, that exact same sentence might live in 15 different standalone manuals. When the safety regulation changes, some poor soul on your team has to manually hunt down and update it 15 separate times. This static file trap, it creates a huge risk for duplicated content, error-prone manual updates, broken links, exorbitant translation costs, and just absolute version control nightmares.
Let's move on to Section 2. The ISO 26531 standard, basically a blueprint for modern documentation.
So how do we actually escape the static file trap? The ISO 26531 standard argues for a very specific architectural shift, and that is the Component Content Management System, or CCMS. Now, a CCMS is a system that makes components available for reuse and linking to build content objects. It fundamentally takes these large monolithic documents and deconstructs them into individually managed, discrete parts. It's kind of like a giant box of Legos. You aren't managing a user manual as one giant file anymore. You are independently managing the specific paragraphs, warnings, and lists that are assembled together to actually build that manual.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, treating content as code and the software engineering analogy.
Look, if software engineers aren't passing around unstructured text files via email to build an application, documentation teams absolutely shouldn't be doing it either. Think about unstructured writing, those typical static files. It's totally chaotic, it relies purely on visual formatting, and it honestly has very low semantic value. Contrast that with structured writing, which typically uses XML. Here, your content elements are predefined, enforced, and fully programmable. You literally label a warning statement as a warning statement in the code itself, not just by making the text bold and red. Because it's structured data, your system can programmatically manipulate it, assemble it, and reuse it across multiple platforms. It is a total game changer.
And the ultimate goal of a component-based system? Well, it all comes down to one absolutely powerful number: 1. This represents a massive return on investment, especially for localization. When you use a CCMS and treat your content as code, you translate a single module exactly one time. You don't pay a translation service to translate the exact same safety warning dozens of times across 50 different static files. The system maintains strict links between your source and target languages. If you update the English component, the system flags only that specific piece for retranslation. It saves an incredible amount of time and, of course, budget.
Okay, Section 4, branch, merge, and control, versioning your content just like a developer.
So if we're treating content as code now, how do we handle multiple writers working on entirely different product releases at the exact same time? Well, the standard requires robust version control, specifically through branching. Branching is basically a method where a set of components is duplicated so they can be modified in parallel. This means your documentation team can be heads down working on the manual for version 2.0 of a product while simultaneously pushing out a critical hotfix to the manual for version 1.0 without ever overwriting each other's work.
Let's walk through how this creates a highly controlled lifecycle for just one single piece of content. Step 1. Checkout. The CCMS actually places a hard lock on the component. I mean, this alone is fantastic. It stops anyone else from jumping in and accidentally overwriting your work. Step 2. You branch and edit your specific instance. Step 3, the content goes through an automated review routing. And finally, Step 4, merge. You optionally merge those branched components back together into a new, single source of truth when the product drops. The CCMS tracks the whole shebang, keeping a precise audit trail of exactly who changed what and exactly when they did it.
All right, on to our last section. Section 5, automating quality and validation, catching errors before publication.
Let's dive into this final piece of the puzzle. Managing your components is really only half the battle, right? Ensuring they are actually flawless is the other half. The ISO standard explicitly states, and I quote, "The component content management system should provide the capability to enforce business rules or style guide rules that use technologies such as ISO Schematron." What this means is we are finally moving away from relying purely on manual human proofreading. We're shifting toward automated, programmatic code reviews for our documentation. So, what on earth is Schematron? Well, it's a language used to make assertions about the presence or absence of patterns in XML documents. You can think of it as this highly intelligent engine that goes way, way beyond a simple spell check. It's actively testing the structural integrity and the logical relationships within the content right as the author is writing it. To put that into perspective, what exactly is Schematron catching out there in the wild? It basically acts as your gatekeeper. It automatically checks for missing required metadata, instantly spots broken internal links, and enforces terminology consistency. But here's the coolest part. It catches invalid combinations of attributes. For example, say a writer tags a specific software feature to appear only for a Mac operating system. But earlier metadata explicitly says this specific product version doesn't even support Mac. The system immediately flags it as an invalid combination. It can literally block publication until those structural errors are completely resolved. It saves the entire team from very costly, very public errors by catching them programmatically. I want to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with a bit of a provocative question. If the software or the products your company builds are strictly version controlled, heavily automated, and rigorously tested, why is your documentation still stuck in the past? Managing docs like static files is just inefficient and, frankly, risky. The ISO 2651 standard makes it crystal clear. By treating content as code, utilizing proper branching and merging, and automating your validation, you can completely revolutionize how you communicate complex info. It is time to ditch the static files and embrace the future of content management. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I absolutely can't wait to explore our next topic with you.